are we saying that, because I'm really just, as this conversation is going through, so obviously it's more just playing. So are we do we believe that really black women are, they're the ones who are holding everything down?
So the Black Panther movie received tremendous reviews over the last few months, as you probably know. And I was privileged to actually watch it twice. And it was actually during the second viewing that I noticed the role that women were playing in terms of the really strong roles and supporting roles for the prince, the Panther himself. And I actually mentioned it to one of my friends about how significant those roles are and the correlation between the roles that I saw in the movie and the experiences that I have as a woman of African descent and other women. And so I thought, what would be good is if we could have that kind of discussion. So today I've invited two amazing women who I feel will be able to shed some light on their own experiences and the overall experience of women of African descent and the role that we play within the community, within the family, and our experiences within that. So to start this discussion, I'd like to introduce Malona and Joan. And we're going to start off with the first question. We've actually got 4 questions, and we're going to start off with the first question with Malona. And she's going to tell us a little bit about what she feels the role of women is in the family and the wider community.
Okay, so I think that the role of women of African descent particularly has been different to other groups of women in the form that as other women we've had to take on the same roles. So we live in a patriarchal society, you know, women are deemed, you know, their role to be in the house and everything else, all the caregiving responsibilities. So that's been our role. But on top of that, because of the economic disadvantages that we face as a community, we have also had to work and hold both positions, whereas until relatively recently, so if we kind of pair our journey with that of a white woman, you know, it's been completely different because, you know, when white women were seen as delicate flowers who couldn't sweat, we were in fields working. So so because of that experience, that I think that we have a unique role within society because we are the backbones of the household because of the historical oppression that, you know, our black men have faced. They haven't been able to bring into the household what they can do. They haven't been able to take on those roles of other men who were the providers. They can't do that because the resources haven't been there for them. So we have had to hold that position as well as holding the traditional positions of being women within the household, which women of other races are only starting to do now, out of choice and need, but we have always done it through forced labour and without choice.
Okay. All right. What do you think about that, Joan?
I'm sort of in agreement in that respect. I think we've had to juggle more than one role, whereas if I look at our white counterparts, they just had to deal with growing up the family, and so that was their main role. Whereas we have to grow up the family, we have to keep the community together, and we have to work. So when you think about all those 3 put together, it is a lot of pressure on black women to perform that. We do perform it, but I think at a cost to ourselves. I think so.
Okay. So what I really like about what you guys have just presented is it's an open view, it's a general view. So give me examples of how you feel as a female yourself that your male folk has not been able to support you. What reasons do you think they were never able to support you while you had to take that role? Not talking about 100 years ago, 200 years. I'm talking about the last 40 years that you've been alive, when we've had education, we've had the opportunity to work, and our men of my generation certainly have been able to go to work. They've been educated like I have. So why do you feel you still have to take on this role as the backbone, as the provider, when your male counterpart has had the same opportunities you have?
Okay, I'm gonna say that I disagree with that. One, I cannot take it down to the last 20, 30 years, because that devalues our experience. Our experiences isn't of that. The legacies aren't of that. So the things that we face now were planted then, and we're still reaping the seeds of what was sown then. So I cannot, and I think that, it's very often we, as black women, because we do so much, we get frustrated with black men, and we say, well, you've had the same opportunities, why don't you? But they haven't. So let's just, they haven't had the same opportunity. Their experiences aren't the same. So when the demasculization of black men and everything else, they could have stepped up a little bit more. But what they have faced, what they have had to face, they have been more forward facing in society. As black women, we're invisible. So even though we face discrimination and we have all of these things, because we're invisible, people will walk past us. Whereas black men aren't invisible. They see them and they face the brunt of it even more so. And being able to go out, most men would say, of any culture, most men will say that, part of their masculinity and their manhood is being able to provide for their family. And when you cannot do that into the way that you want to do that, then it's very, it can be quite harmful to you and how you feel. And there was a study done by Harvard, I think it's about 2000, just after 2000, and it was about, it was questioning men and how they see their roles in the family. And, all of the men said, from all the different racial groups that were surveyed, said that it's about being a provider. But when you can't do that, when you don't feel that, then it can make you feel really bad. And one of the things that they found in the survey was that they found that middle class professional black men take on those traditional roles. So they want women in the household. They want to be able to do that. They feel that they're now in an economic position to do that. And they absolutely want that. They don't want, different types of family dynamics. Whereas, lower class people who are socioeconomically less well off, regardless of race, don't have the same affinity to being in a marriage and to be doing all of those things. So even outside of race, we're looking at economics here. And when you look at economics, you will see that throughout other racial groups and not just within our own.
Okay. I'd like to bring you into this as well, Joan. I want to ask a direct question, because going from what Malona just said about men, because it's a general statement, black men generally have not been able to give the opportunities. How many black men do you know who are professionals in your experience since you've been, how many of them would you say that since, in your experience of growing up are professional men, have done very well, have been married, have been able to hold down and support their families?
There's been a few, but if I want to take on in a personal role what's happened to my brother, I remember they were going to the carnival, and they got into Finsbury Park station, and there were policemen there, and my brother was accosted. They had, I think they were taking bottles with them, bottles of, was it, I'm trying to think, it was ginger beer, something similar to that. Anyway, what then happened, the police rushed my brother, the glass broke, and then they just beat him up practically. But then they said that the policeman had been injured, so much so that his hand was hanging off. This is because my brother had injured him with the bottle. Nothing like that transpired. And so when we were talking about it, I said, well, they've got CCTV, they must be able to do that. Obviously, that wasn't there. In the end, he was sentenced to 3 years. He served 1 year. So then he's saying, well, how am I going to get a job? Because now I've got this record. How am I going to be able to do that? And so you can see the difference to what he was before to what he is now, because you think at the back of your head, I'm a black man, am I going to get a job? Plus I have now a record. How does that affect me? And so you can see that, and that happens that's happened to a lot of black men. And we can all address that in the 70s, 80s, where we had miscarriages of justice. And we know that as a black person, when you're facing the courts, you're more likely to get a heavier sentence than your white counterpart.
Okay, so I don't want it to go off into crime. I really want to stick to the point here. We're looking at the role of black women, so I don't want to talk about the disadvantage that black men have had necessarily. I want to look at black men who are not disadvantaged, because there are loads. Okay. And we want to focus on where men are in position of support, but women still having to take on that role, like you were saying originally. I want to know, why is it that we are still, even where I'm asking the questions, I'm not going to make an assumption because I haven't my own experiences, my own opinions, but I want to know, why is it that is it because we feel we have to, or do we have to have this take on the role, where we are the strong ones, where we are the leaders? Malona used the word invisible. I don't know if I totally agree with that, but where we are taking opportunities to get the jobs, to look after our families, etc., etc. And in some instances, a lot of women are doing it, not all, but there are some women doing this on their own. But why is it, do you feel we still have to do that, even when our male folk are working, are leaders? And the thing is, my dad worked. I don't know if your dad worked, and I don't know if your dad worked, right? But I know my father worked, right? I know my mum worked, right? And so, and many people that I grew up with, both their parents worked. The point of the matter is about this support network. Why is it that and I'm not saying other races don't, because I do believe they do, but why do you think that is, that we still feel that we have to have this real strong sense of leadership, ownership, and, do you know what I mean, so that we're supporting our community as a whole?
I think when you said that our men have the same opportunities, I don't actually agree with that. I want you to give me evidence why they don't, because the thing is, I went to school here,
right?
And the thing is, as far as I understand, when I went to school, the guys in my class got the same education, and I know guys who my generation are educated. I know my brother went to school, my brother got educated. A lot of his friends went on to got decent jobs and still have, and I know so many men of colour, of African descent, especially African men, who were educated. When I went to uni, there was loads of African men who were educated, who have been educated and have gone on and think. And then in the workplace, I have worked with men of African descent who are also in positions of power, and they've done very well. So my focus is not, and I do understand that there are those who are disadvantaged, but the thing is, I know loads of them who are not disadvantaged. The vast majority that I know are,
okay, but
do you understand? They're not on the dole.
But when we have conversations that are based on just our own personal experiences, this is when it can get a little bit messy. So when you look at what's happening in America right now, and the tribe, it's all based on my personal experience, and you can't see. So I understand that you're saying in your experience, but however, but if we look at the empirical research that is out there, and there is loads of it out there. So if you look at someone like Stella Dadsey, Tell It Like It Is, all the people that contributed into that book, all the research that was done out of the Mayor of London's office, and it will tell you that, I will tell you, I worked in equalities, and I've seen there are not the same opportunities, because, even when it comes to the fundamental education, black girls will do better because they are less offensive than, so when you see, and I see it I see it time and time again. So if we have, so if we have a group of young black men who are doing what boys do and they're acting the fool or whatever, and a group of white boys or other race of boys, and they're doing the same things, they are being boisterous, silly boys, sit down, tie them out, let's do that. These boys, you want to call the police for them because they're aggressive and everybody's scared. As a black female, if I was to be loud or whatever acting, it would be like I would be just being over the top, but they wouldn't be scared. I would be disciplined, I would be everything. Whereas, if it was a white female or something, it would just be, okay, So racism is involved in black boys and men face it more than women, because there is a fear factor that is added onto that, and that fear factor is real, and that will affect how you treat, what you do, and who you want around you.
Okay, so let's go with that then. So basically, if what we're trying to say is that, if I'm going to take, let's recap that black men generally have been disadvantaged, so they can never be leaders in our community. Okay, so that's what I want to get. That's why I'm asking that question. That's right. Okay, so let's stay there then. So let me go back to what you said. So because of the offensive experiences that they've all had then, let's assume, and none of them have had anything good happen to them. Right?
No, Grace. But you're going the opposite. No, that can't work.
Let me put it in context.
I hear you putting it in context, but what I'd like you to do is just take my words for what they are. Right. Because if you spin my words,
so is it the majority of black men that has had that experience then?
Many.
No, is it the majority or the minority?
I would say the majority.
So, okay.
But you can't determine someone's individual resilience levels. So where they are in that journey. And I'm not saying that...
Okay, that's a good one. Let me write that one down.
There are lots of black men who were providers. I grew up in a household with my parents. My dad is a provider. My mum had a little part-time job. So there are lots of families like that. However, women have had to be, because it is the historical thing, because it rolls on and on and on. So if you look at, in terms of, one of the issues that we do have, and I'll say we probably have it more than others, which kind of puts a burden onto a black woman, is not the fact of the man being in the house and not being a stand-up, present father. It's just not being there at all.
Yeah.
That is where black women take the brunt of it more than other racial groups, and the data is there.
Okay, let's hold on to that for a second. Because I'm going to come back to that point. I just wanted to, because we talk about the role of women in the community, I just wanted to kind of tie this up. And the reason why I'm being very specific, because I really want us to understand that, is it because we're having to play this role in the wider community and the family because our black men haven't got a choice? Or is it that we haven't got a choice because of the historical context and they've been disadvantaged, etc., which I don't believe, so you probably can understand from my voice, right? Or is it that we have chosen to take on that role? Going back to the question, is it because of the historical context that we will always have to play that role because what happened how many years ago? Do we have a choice in the matter? Do our men have a choice in the matter? Or will we forever, so my daughter and her daughter and her daughter is always going to constantly have to do this?
Everything's a choice, and I'm going to see. Everything's a choice.
So we do have a choice.
Of course it's a choice.
Okay. What do you think?
I think that women sometimes create the issues that we have in terms of if our man is doing something, instead of just dealing with the issue and saying, you need to pull your socks up, you're thinking about, okay, he's going to feel this way, so you're bringing other things into the fix, and maybe it's the thought of the racial bias then that you're going to stand up for him regardless. You're making an excuse for him. Sometimes as women, we make excuse for our men. So I think that's something that we need to address and to be honest with that. Sometimes we do that, and then in doing so, we don't allow them to step up to the mark. I think that's very, very important.
So then that will be a choice factor then. Because regardless of the historical context, we are now into we were in the millennium. We have choices, but as women, we still have a role to play within that choice factor. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but we tend to be nurturing. Yeah, and this is why I say sometimes we actually breed the men that we have sometimes, because we don't allow them to get those knocks. We're always trying to prop up their ego, as opposed to just letting them say, you know what, I have to deal with that. Women are different from men. Okay, for instance, I gave the analogy of the mountain. Okay, there's a cup there, and a woman will say, there's a cup there, there's an issue. I need to move that cup, I need to go over that cup, but I need to do something so it's out of the way. Now, what we're saying generally is men, for whatever reason, if you want to take on that racial bias and the racism that they face, will look at that cup and say, that cup's there. You know, the cup's there. So I'm saying to you, the cup's there, but I'm going to move it. I'm going to go over it or something to get to where I want to go. They're just going to see the cup is there. So sometimes we have that and we say, well, we know how they are, so therefore let's just, help them. Let's just help them to move the cup. And so, again, we need to support our men, but sometimes we need to give them that ability to say they're going to sort it out. And I think if we're honest, sometimes we haven't done that. We haven't stepped up to the role in that we just leave them to do that, to understand how they're going to do it, as opposed to, we're going to help them, we're going to prop them up. And sometimes I think it's to our disadvantage, because then we're doing too many things.
But I think that, I think that it's general. I think that it's because, there's two intersections here. There's the race and there's the gender. And I think that as women and women's role in a patriarchal society is that these are all of the things that you do. This is what you do as a woman. You nurture, you take care of everybody within the household. But the added burden that we have is that we were never just in the household, which was the issue. Yeah, so if your job is just to take care of the house, if your job is in the household and you hold that corner and a man holds another and you have that, or whatever, however you want to do that, because it's a Victorian ideal that before that, I was looking at some research that was about, pre-colonial traditional African communities, and there is no monolith, as we've said before, but I think it was the Yoruba community, whereas that they, sex wasn't even something that separated the genders. It was about oh my gosh, I'm trying to think. Yeah, it was about the roles. It was about where you married into. It was all these different things. But sex was never seen as, as a woman, you are this because you're a woman, and as a man, and these were never, and all of these are big colonial Victorian ideals that have been put on, and now we're trying to do something and create something that wasn't there, because if you look at our whole experience, we really have worked together. We wouldn't have survived if we hadn't worked together. We have worked together. We have had roles, and although we haven't traditionally married and had things, and there was movement and there was different things, we made it work for us the way it worked for us. But these models don't look like other people's models now. So what model do we want? Is it the right model? Does it fit us? Is it about having the man as a breadwinner? It's who says that's good or not? What are we striving for? What do we want? Do we want the men to take on that role? Do we want it? Or do we not?
I think bringing it right back to the question, we're looking at how women, the role of women and the wider community. It's really interesting in hearing what you're saying. I think one of the things that I find fascinating is looking at us historically. But also looking at it historically and looking at how certain events, so economic, policies, procedures, whatever the case may be, has changed us. And then ourselves, as individuals, we have our own personalities. And within that, we're having our own ideologies, which we create differences within our experiences. And I think, looking at it from that standpoint will obviously have an effect on how we play that role in the community. I think we can't really discuss it without really looking at the role of men as well, in terms of why we are this supporting role. And that's what the thing is. Why do we do it? I would like us to just tell me in your own way why we do it. There's very wide about the thing without talking about why do you think. Okay, let me say. Okay, no, let me rephrase. Why do you do it? Because I want you to get personal now. I don't want you to talk about the general community anymore. I want you to talk about your own personal experience and say, why do you feel, if you are actually, because you may not play that role. So, Milona, why do you play the role as a supporter of your family within within your immediate family, in your household, and then it's maybe to say maybe with your family, i.e. your extended family, maybe your cousins, your mom, and so forth. Do you find that that's the role that you're playing?
Yeah, I would say I just.
And how do you do that?
Just in terms of just being there for everybody, being the one that will kind of have a direction, a vision of doing this. So, I mean, but I can't. Yes, it would be down to me being a black woman and some of the characteristics and the traits that I get that society said this is what you are as a black woman. And so we
don't talk about that.
Okay,
talk
but
about
what I'm saying is that we take on those labels.
Talk to me about how you feel as a person. I want us to get away from the objective now and be subjective now, and really speak about, because this is one of the thing with this panel is that I really want to hear our own personal opinion, because my opinion is mine about my lived experience, not about anybody else's. It's really about me now. I'm listening. I've shut off all the other external voices. I've shut off all the external sites. I'm talking about me now. So the camera is on me. It's on you now, Milona. What is it that you do? Why do you feel, if you do feel you play this supporting role as a woman? And do you think, and tell me if you think, like you just said, is it because you're a woman of African descent, or do you think if you were Asian woman or a Chinese woman, would you still be playing that same role?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that the role that I play, when I look at my very close friends who are, you know, I call her my sister, Chinese, same kind of role, and look at my Asian. So when I look at my friends of different, I think that it's a women role in a patriarchal society. Me personally, I like, I might moan about it, as we do, but I do it because I like it. There is nothing I do in my life that isn't a choice.
Give me an example of how you play that role.
How I play a supportive role.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's just, I think it's just being there. If somebody, if anyone has, so I know that my friend is having huge issues with her son. Mm-hmm. So I just rang up the spa and said, tomorrow, bring a bikini, bring a towel, be at my house at 10. That's it. You need it. I'm going to support you through it, because she would do the same for me. She's my sister. In terms of my role within my family, I'm the third oldest of the cousins. And so I think that in terms of, I think it's generally because girls in the family. So, you know, I don't remember my brother ever being I was in the kitchen. He wasn't. So it's those gender roles that you have. So I kind of take on a leadership role because it's my personality. I have a female cousin who is older than me. She didn't take on that role. That's not her personality. That's my personality. So I take it because I choose it. She's chosen not to. She ain't having it. So it's my choice. I do it because I like it. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't do it.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much for that. And Joan, the same question to you. A personal one. I would like you to give me your opinion of how you feel you're actually playing this role.
I think it's maybe because it is my personality, because we talk about that. And whether it's a leadership. Okay, so for instance, I have friends, because we're at church a lot. And if anything was to happen, I'm the one that's, so, you know, we're going to go out. Let's do this. I'm the one that's always pushing for us to go to different places, whether it's going on holiday. You know, we went to Paris. You know, I would be the one that's going to be the organizer. They say, oh, Patsy, well, you know, you do that. You go and do that because that's what you do. And so for me, supporting is a part of my personality. It's something that I do love to do because I want to have a cohesive group of people around me. I don't like the disunity. So for me, that works for me. That's what makes me happy. That's part of what makes me happy. Okay. So,
are we saying that, because I'm really just, as this conversation is going through, so obviously it's more just playing. So are we? Do we believe that really black women they're the ones who are holding everything down?
I personally, there's a good question. My personal opinion is that I think it's a choice that we have made. I do accept the fact that we have a historical context and a historical experience, and my forefathers who I don't know, and mothers who I don't know, but I do know my mother, and I do remember the role my mother played. But while my mom was a strong woman, so was my dad. See, I have very, very vivid memory that my mum supported. She did what she had to do, but my dad was also a very strong character in our household, and regardless of the historical context, that was my experience. And my brother's still a very strong character, and I know so many men of Caribbean origin and African origin who characters are very strong. Now, I still feel as women, though, in my personal opinion, I think as a woman, I tend to do what I do because I've chosen to. And I do believe from a certain, from one perspective, some of it is feminism, right, for me, because, I'm a woman, I'm equal to my man. I can get a job, I can be educated, I can, he drives a car, I can drive a car, he does that, I can do that. And to a certain degree, I think I have been driven by that philosophy, the one of feminism, as opposed to say, I'm doing it because my mom did it and my grandmother did it, which I don't know my grandmother. I do believe that has impacted on my particular opinion, which has changed over the years, and we'll go on to that another time. But that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to just ascertain our own personal experience of this supporting role and why we do it. Do you understand? And whether we do it at all. Yes. I do believe to a certain degree that in the community as well, we do tend to stand up if something, because we are quite passionate as well. And if I have a passion for something, not all of us are the same. There's some people who have no interest at all in some of the issues that we have. Some people do. But if I have a passion about something, I may be driven to go out and be political. I'm probably going to march, hold a banner or two, have a conversation, maybe get into a panel, make a phone call onto the radio station or so forth. Again, that's about my passion, and I might take a leading role in that. But then I, as a personal person, as me personally speaking, I'm finding now that I just want to sit back. I want other people. I would like to see the men. I've brought my 3 sons up to be men. I want them to have the ability to do things for themselves. And I don't want them to have no excuses whatsoever under the sun. But from the fact that you have the ability to be a man, you have the ability to be a leader, you have the ability to support me. And even if it is to clean the kitchen, to sweep the floor, to go and do the shopping, you can support me too. I don't have to do it all. Do you understand? Yeah. And I think that, for me, that's my personal opinion, and this is where I'm at.
So for me, with my dad, I found him to be a very good supporter in terms of he would, he always gave us breakfast in bed. Like, before he went to work, that's what he would do. If my mum went away, he was the one who was doing the cooking and cleaning. On Sundays, my dad would clean. He would say, you know what, you guys rest off, and I'm going to cook, and I'm going to clean the house. And that's what he chose to do. So I understand that role, which it's not the norm, but my father did that. And I can look back and say, that's how my father was. And a lot of West Indian parents, their fathers were like that. So although we talk about that, it seems as if there's a difference to the men of that era, like my father, as to the men now. I think there is a big difference.
I'm
in terms of
the whole thing, I'm struggling to get there, because I said there's 2 intersections, and I'm seeing this is a sexist, feminist, this is an issue that women globally, in terms of their role in the home and everything else, and what is it that what is the difference between black men and other men? Because the roles, so is there a difference? Are black men doing anything that any other man of any other race isn't doing? Are they taking on any other roles that isn't doing? Because, I definitely think that, the issues that we face in society issue, we both face them together. So we're both at the bottom of the rung in terms of from out of the starting gate.
Yeah.
So does that create some equality? Although I think that their experiences are harsher. I don't have to worry about getting my head busted when I'm on my way home, but I fear for my son when he does. Yeah. So the experience is different. I don't live in constant fear, but I know that black boys do.
Yeah.
So it's a different experience. So when it comes into terms of the black women's role, what makes it unique to
That's
other
what I'm asking
women's
you personally. That's what I'm asking you.
I can't. The
You
only thing that I
can talk about
see is in terms
yourself.
of that. I can't see how.
That's what I said, because I know if I had this conversation with most women and I say talk about yourself, the role is their answers is going to be quite positive, which is quite interesting. Because when I speak to people, everybody has quite a nice story to tell. And then I think we have what I call a global story, which is, and we'll come on to that another time. But you know, I do think that there are some differences. That's why I wanted to hear our own personal experiences and our personal take on how we see this supporting role.
But it's
and
different.
I would.
It's difficult for me to say about a white person. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I'm not asking you to.
Yeah,
I was not asking you to.
But you know,
Yes.
sometimes we talk about women of black descent. Is there a difference? Is there a
Absolutely.
difference between
I'm going to have that
the white
platform.
person and the black person?
I will have a
then?
platform where I'm
This
going
is
to
what I mean.
invite women of different racial groups, and I'm going to also invite men to have this conversation, because I feel even our opinions are ours. And then when we speak to you speak to the women or men or wherever, their opinions is going to be different. So it'd be nice to just have a nice wider perspective. So right now, I just would like to get your views. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, just press the like. And if you would like to see more of us, please press subscribe and press the notification button. If you'd like to participate in the discussion further, you can also comment below. And please don't forget to share. Thank you.